Have you ever walked past someone in need and pretended not to see them? It's a choice we all face, a silent negotiation with our conscience. For 24-year-old Marcus, a waiter drowning in a sea of student debt and late rent notices, the easiest thing to do would have been to look away. The woman slumped in the corner of his section was just another late night casualty of the city, a well-dressed but disheveled figure who had clearly had one too many. His manager had already given him the side eye, a silent warning not to get involved, that some messes weren't his to clean up. But as Marcus cleared the adjacent tables, he heard a soft, almost imperceptible whimper. It wasn't the sound of drunken indulgence, but of something deeper, a raw, human vulnerability that resonated with his own quiet struggles. In that moment, Marcus made a choice. He didn't see a problem to be avoided. He saw a person who was hurting. He approached her not with judgment, but with a simple, compassionate question that would unknowingly rewrite his entire future. "Ma'am, are you okay?" This one small act of kindness, a single thread of human connection in the vast, indifferent tapestry of the city, was about to unravel a destiny he could have never imagined. This is the story of how a moment of empathy, a decision to see the person behind the problem, transformed a struggling waiter into the proud owner of a thriving restaurant, proving that the greatest investments we can make are not in stocks or bonds, but in each other. The relentless fluorescent lights of The Gilded Spoon hummed a monotonous tune, a soundtrack to Marcus's equally monotonous life. For the past 3 years, this upscale downtown eatery had been his world, a world of balancing precariously stacked plates, of placating entitled customers, and of smiling through the gnawing anxiety of his ever-growing pile of bills. He moved with a practiced grace between the linen-draped tables, his dark features a stark contrast to the gleaming silverware and crystal glasses. Tonight, the city was a symphony of flashing lights and blaring sirens outside the restaurant's panoramic windows, a constant reminder of the life he was so desperately trying to build for himself. He was a ghost in this world of affluence, a silent observer of a life he felt he could only ever serve, never partake in. His own dreams of one day opening a small, cozy diner of his own felt as distant as the stars he could no longer see through the city's perpetual orange glow. He was just another face in the crowd, another cog in the machine that kept the city running. As he navigated the bustling dining room, his eyes fell upon a woman seated alone in a dimly lit corner booth. She was impeccably dressed in a tailored silk blouse and a string of pearls that shimmered even in the low light, but her posture was anything but composed. Her head was bowed, her shoulders slumped, and an empty bottle of expensive sake stood sentinel beside a half-empty glass. She had been there for hours, long after her dinner companion had departed, and her initial boisterous laughter had slowly dissolved into a somber silence. Other waiters steered clear of her, their faces a mixture of pity and annoyance. She was a liability, a potential scene waiting to happen. Marcus, however, saw something else. He saw the faint tremor in her hands as she reached for her glass, the way her carefully constructed facade was crumbling with each passing moment. He saw a reflection of his own mother on the nights his father's temper had flared, a quiet desperation that tugged at a familiar chord within him. He knew he should leave her be, that getting involved was a risk he couldn't afford to take, but the memory of his mother's tear-streaked face, of her silent pleas for someone, anyone, to notice her pain, spurred him into action. He approached her table with 2 glasses of water and a small, unassuming plate of sliced oranges. He placed them gently before her, his movements slow and deliberate. "Mom," he began, his voice a soft murmur that wouldn't startle her. "I thought you might like some water." The woman lifted her head, her eyes, a startling shade of hazel, clouded with a mixture of confusion and intoxication. They were the eyes of someone who was lost, adrift in a sea of their own making. "I'm fine," she slurred, her words thick and indistinct. But Marcus didn't retreat. He pulled up a chair and sat down opposite her, a breach of restaurant etiquette that could cost him his job, but a necessary act of human decency that his conscience demanded. "My name is Marcus," he said, his voice calm and steady. "And I don't think you're fine, but I think you will be." He began to speak to her then, not as a waiter to a customer, but as one human being to another. He told her about his day, about the ridiculous demands of a customer who had insisted his steak was cooked a degree too rare, about the camaraderie he shared with the kitchen staff, about his dreams of a small diner with a jukebox that played old soul music. He spoke of his own struggles, of the crushing weight of expectation and the quiet fear of failure that was his constant companion. He didn't ask her for her story. He simply offered her his own, a lifeline of shared humanity in the lonely expanse of the night. And slowly, almost imperceptibly, the woman began to respond. She didn't speak of her own sorrows, but she listened. The tension in her shoulders eased, the tremor in her hands subsided, and for the first time that night, a flicker of clarity returned to her eyes. The city outside continued its frantic dance, but in that small corner booth, a quiet sanctuary had been forged, a testament to the power of a single, unassuming act of kindness. Marcus had no way of knowing that the woman sitting across from him was Eleanor Vance, a reclusive billionaire who had built a global empire from the ground up, a woman who had everything and nothing all at once. He only knew that she was a person in pain, and that for a few brief moments he had been able to offer her a small measure of solace. As the first hints of dawn began to paint the sky in shades of pink and gray, he helped her to her feet, his arm a steady presence at her side. He hailed a taxi, gently easing her into the back seat, and as the cab pulled away from the curb, he slipped a piece of paper with his number on it into her hand. "If you ever need to talk," he said, his voice a quiet promise, "just call." He watched until the taxi's taillights disappeared around the corner, a lone figure on the deserted city street, unaware that this single act of compassion had just set in motion a chain of events that would change his life forever. The following week was a blur of exhausting shifts and mounting bills. The memory of the enigmatic woman in the corner booth had begun to fade, relegated to the back of Marcus's mind as just another strange encounter in the city that never slept. He had half expected a call, a brief acknowledgement of his kindness, but as the days bled into one another, he dismissed the thought. People like her, he reasoned, lived in a different world, a world where a struggling waiter was little more than a fleeting, inconsequential blip on their radar. He was back to his routine, to the endless cycle of serving and smiling, his dreams of a better life once again relegated to the realm of fantasy. It was a particularly grueling Tuesday evening when his manager, a man whose permanent expression was a scowl of disapproval, approached him with a look of utter bewilderment. "There's someone here to see you." he said, his voice laced with a mixture of suspicion and awe. She's in the private dining room. Marcus's heart sank. He immediately assumed it was a complaint that the woman from the other night had had a change of heart and decided to report his unprofessional conduct. He braced himself for the inevitable, for the loss of the job that, despite its soul-crushing monotony, was his only means of survival. He walked towards the private dining room, his steps heavy with dread, his mind racing with 1,000 different scenarios, all of them ending in his dismissal. He pushed open the heavy oak door and found himself face to face with the woman from the corner booth. But this was not the disheveled, intoxicated woman he had helped into a taxi. This was Eleanor Vance, the CEO of Vance Industries, a woman whose face he had seen on the cover of Forbes magazine, a woman who exuded an aura of power and authority that was both intimidating and captivating. She was dressed in a sharp, tailored suit, her hazel eyes clear and focused, her expression a mixture of gratitude and something else he couldn't quite decipher. "Marcus," she said, her voice a calm, melodic tone that commanded attention. "Thank you for coming." She gestured to the chair opposite her, and he sat down, his mind still struggling to process the situation. "I want to apologize," she began, her gaze unwavering, "for my behavior the other night. I was not myself." She spoke of the immense pressure she was under, of the loneliness that came with being at the top, of a world where everyone wanted something from her, where genuine human connection was a commodity rarer than gold. She told him that his kindness, his willingness to see past her wealth and her drunken stupor, had been a lifeline in a moment of profound despair. "You didn't see a billionaire," she said, a faint smile gracing her lips. "You saw a person, and for that I am eternally grateful." She then slid a sleek, leather-bound folder across the polished mahogany table. "I've been looking for a way to repay your kindness," she continued, "and I believe I've found a fitting one." Marcus opened the folder, his hands trembling slightly. Inside was a set of legal documents, a deed to a property in the heart of the city's trendy arts district, and a business plan for a high-end, Japanese restaurant. "I'm giving you a restaurant, Marcus," she said, her words hanging in the air like a symphony of disbelief. "A Japanese restaurant. I know you love to cook, and I know you have a passion for creating a welcoming space for people. I want to give you the chance to do that, to build your own dream." Marcus was speechless. He stared at the documents, at the intricate architectural drawings, at the projected profit margins, his mind a whirlwind of confusion and disbelief. This was the stuff of fairy tales, of lottery wins and Hollywood endings. It was a life he had never dared to dream of, a future that had always been just beyond his reach. He looked up at Eleanor, his eyes wide with a mixture of shock and gratitude. I don't know what to say," he stammered, his voice barely a whisper. "I can't accept this." Eleanor's smile widened. "You're not accepting a handout, Marcus," she said, her voice firm but gentle. "You're accepting an opportunity you have earned through your character, through your integrity. I'm not just giving you a restaurant, I'm investing in you. I believe you have what it takes to make this a success." She explained that she had been wanting to diversify her portfolio, to invest in a business that was more about passion and community than just profit margins. She had been searching for the right person, someone with the heart and the drive to create something truly special, and in him she had found that person. The restaurant, she explained, was a turnkey operation. The space was already secured, the renovations were underway, and a team of top-tier chefs and designers were at his disposal. All he had to do was say yes. It was a moment that would forever divide his life into two distinct chapters, the before and the after. The before was a life of quiet desperation, of unfulfilled dreams and mounting anxieties. The after was a life of boundless possibility, of a future that was his to create. In that moment, surrounded by the opulent splendor of the private dining room, Marcus made a choice. He chose to believe in himself, to believe in the extraordinary kindness of a stranger, and to believe that sometimes, just sometimes, the universe conspires to make our wildest dreams come true. He looked at Eleanor, a newfound sense of purpose radiating from him, and with a voice that was no longer a whisper, but a confident declaration, he said, "Yes, I accept." The transition from waiter to restaurant owner was less of a smooth ascent and more of a turbulent, white-knuckled roller coaster ride. The sleek, leather-bound folder Eleanor had presented him with had been a blueprint for a dream, but Marcus soon discovered that building a dream from the ground up was a messy, chaotic, and often overwhelming process. The once distant world of profit margins, of supply chain logistics, of staffing and marketing, was now his daily reality, a relentless barrage of decisions and responsibilities that threatened to consume him. The first few weeks were a whirlwind of meetings, with architects and designers poring over spreadsheets until his eyes burned, of interviewing chefs and waiters and dishwashers, each one with their own set of hopes and expectations. He was no longer just responsible for himself. He was responsible for the livelihoods of an entire team, a weight that settled heavily on his shoulders. The Japanese restaurant, which he had christened Yukio, a nod to the Japanese concept of the floating world, was a beautiful, meticulously designed space, testament to Eleanor's impeccable taste and boundless resources. But Marcus quickly realized that a beautiful space was just a shell. It was the people, the passion, the heart that would truly bring it to life. His biggest challenge, however, came from within. The whispers of self, doubt that had always been his quiet companions, now roared in his ears, a constant chorus of inadequacy. Who was he, a former waiter with no business experience, to be at the helm of such an ambitious venture? He was an imposter, a fraud, a man playing a role he was not qualified for. He found himself second, guessing every decision, agonizing over every detail, paralyzed by the fear of failure. He would wake up in the middle of the night, his mind racing with 1,000 different anxieties. Had he chosen the right steak menu? Was the lighting in the dining room too dim? Would anyone even show up on opening night? He felt like he was drowning in a sea of his own insecurities. The dream that had once seemed so intoxicating, now threatening to become a nightmare. It was during one of these late-night spirals of self-doubt that he received a call from Eleanor. She had been a silent partner up until this point, a distant, benevolent benefactor who had given him complete autonomy. But now, as if sensing his distress, she reached out. "How are you holding up, Marcus?" she asked, her voice a soothing balm to his frayed nerves. He hesitated for a moment, the prideful part of him wanting to put on a brave face, to pretend that everything was under control, but the weight of his anxieties was too heavy to bear alone. He confessed his fears, his insecurities, his overwhelming sense of being an imposter. He expected pity, or perhaps even a hint of disappointment, But instead, Eleanor laughed, a warm, genuine laugh that took him by surprise. "Welcome to the club, Marcus," she said, her voice filled with a knowing empathy. "Every entrepreneur, every CEO, every person who has ever dared to build something from nothing has felt what you're feeling right now. The fear of failure is a sign that you care, that you're invested, that you're pushing yourself beyond your comfort zone." She then shared with him her own stories of struggle, of the countless setbacks and failures she had experienced on her path to success. She spoke of the sleepless nights, of the moments of crippling self-doubt, of the times she had been tempted to give up. "Success is not about avoiding failure, Marcus," she said, her voice a steady anchor in the storm of his anxieties. "It's about learning from it, about picking yourself up and trying again, about having the courage to be vulnerable, to ask for help, to admit that you don't have all the answers." Her words were a revelation, a paradigm shift that reframed his entire perspective. He was not alone in his struggles. His fears were not a sign of weakness, but a testament to his commitment. He was not an imposter. He was an apprentice, learning and growing with each new challenge. From that moment on, something within him shifted. He began to embrace the chaos, to see the challenges not as obstacles, but as opportunities for growth. He started to trust his instincts, to delegate responsibilities, to lean on the expertise of his team. He spent hours in the kitchen with his head chef, a culinary genius who had trained in the finest restaurants in Kyoto, not just observing, but learning, immersing himself in the art of Japanese cuisine. He learned the delicate dance of balancing flavors, the intricate art of sushi making, the subtle nuances of steak pairing. He worked alongside his waiters, not as a boss, but as a mentor, sharing his own experiences, teaching them the importance of genuine connection, of making every customer feel seen and valued. He was no longer just a restaurant owner. He was a student, a teacher, a leader. He was building more than just a business. He was building a community, a family. As the grand opening approached, the fear had not entirely disappeared, but it was no longer a paralyzing force. It was a quiet hum in the background, a reminder of what was at stake, a motivator to be better, to do better. He was ready. Yukio was ready. The doors were about to open, and Marcus, the once struggling waiter, was about to step into the spotlight, not as an imposter, but as the proud creator of his own destiny. The night of Yukio's grand opening was a symphony of clinking glasses, of lively chatter, and of the tantalizing aroma of expertly crafted Japanese cuisine. The restaurant was alive, a vibrant tapestry of light and sound and energy, a stark contrast to the quiet, sterile space it had been just a few weeks prior. Marcus moved through the bustling dining room, not with the frantic energy of a nervous first-time owner, but with a calm, confident grace that he had never known before. He greeted guests with a warm, genuine smile, his eyes sparkling with a mixture of pride and gratitude. He was no longer a ghost in the world of affluence. He was the host, the creator, the heart and soul of this beautiful, thriving space. The city's top food critics were there, their pens poised, their palates ready to judge. Influential bloggers were snapping photos, their faces illuminated by the glow of their smartphones. But Marcus wasn't focused on them. He was focused on the faces of his customers, on the look of pure bliss as they savored a perfectly sliced piece of toro, on the sound of their laughter as they shared a bottle of sake, on the quiet moments of connection that were happening at every table. He saw a young couple on a first date, their nervous energy slowly melting away with each shared plate of tempura. He saw a group of old friends, their laughter echoing through the room as they reminisced over a platter of sashimi. He saw a family celebrating a birthday, their faces aglow with joy as a platter of mochi adorned with a single, flickering candle was placed before them. This was what he had envisioned. This was the dream that had sustained him through the long nights of doubt and anxiety. He had created more than just a restaurant. He had created a space for human connection, a place where people could come together to celebrate, to connect, to simply be. As the night drew to a close, Eleanor Vance, who had been quietly observing from a corner booth, approached him, her eyes shining with pride. "You've done it, Marcus," she said, her voice filled with a genuine admiration that was more valuable to him than any 5-star review. "You've created something truly special." He looked around at the bustling dining room, at the happy, contented faces of his customers, at the dedicated team that had helped him bring his vision to life, and for the first time in a long time, he felt a profound sense of peace. The journey had been arduous, fraught with challenges and self-doubt, but it had also been transformative. He was no longer the struggling waiter, the man haunted by a quiet desperation. He was a creator, a leader, a man who had dared to dream and had had the courage to make that dream a reality. In the weeks and months that followed, Yukio became the talk of the town, a culinary destination that was celebrated not just for its exquisite food, but for its warm, inviting atmosphere, for the genuine sense of hospitality that permeated every aspect of the dining experience. Marcus became a respected figure in the city's culinary scene, a testament to the power of passion, perseverance, and the transformative power of a single act of kindness. He never forgot the lessons he had learned, the struggles he had overcome. He remained grounded, humble, and deeply grateful for the opportunity he had been given. He made a point of hiring staff from all walks of life, creating a supportive and inclusive work environment, of paying his employees a living wage, a stark contrast to the often exploitative nature of the restaurant industry. He started a program to train at-risk youth in the culinary arts, giving them the same kind of second chance that he had been given. He was no longer just a restaurant owner. He was a mentor, a community builder, a force for positive change. His story, the story of the black waiter who had helped a drunk billionaire and had been rewarded with a Japanese restaurant, became something of a local legend, a modern-day fairy tale that inspired hope and reminded people of the extraordinary power of human connection. But for Marcus, the real story was not about the money or the success. It was about the journey, about the transformation, about the quiet, unassuming moments of kindness that have the power to change our lives in the most unexpected and beautiful ways. It was a testament to the fact that our lives are not defined by our circumstances, but by our choices, by our willingness to see the humanity in others, to lend a helping hand, to believe in the possibility of a better world. Thank you for joining us on this journey. If you believe in the power of kindness and the beauty of second chances, if you believe that every person has the potential to create their own destiny, then we invite you to become a part of our community. Subscribe to Lived Truths for more stories that inspire, that uplift, and that remind us of the extraordinary power that lies within each and every one of us. Click that subscribe button and join us as we continue to explore the lived truths that connect us all.